Jacques Derrida has a concept of trace, which is not that easy to understand. I mean, it's related to his method, if you want to call it that. Derrida probably wouldn't. It's a method of deconstruction, which was in various books by Derrida. And there's the concept of deconstruction, of course, and we have the concept of difference, which is the non-word and non-concept, which he writes in Speech and Phenomena. Well, it's not in Speech and Phenomena, it's a separate essay, but Northwestern University Press puts the essay difference in the same volume, so it's nice. So, difference is, he never puts like a whole meaning on anything. He never puts like definite meaning or definite existence on anything, and he never tells you what difference means. He does so on purpose, because if there's a definite meaning for difference, then the whole thing of deconstruction doesn't really work. I mean, the whole thing is about deconstructing oppositions. Mostly binary oppositions, but I think it could be more than that. But it's mostly binary oppositions, binary conceptual oppositions that deconstruction deconstructs, and it deconstructs, like let's say I write this big book about why dualism is the correct philosophy of mind, and deconstruction would deconstruct my whole theory, and it would marginalize it to, the other side, the other side, because dualism is what it is because it's not monism. Dualism, the whole thing with trace though is when you deconstruct a concept, you expose a trace, and the whole theory the whole method. I mean, I say method like this because it's not supposed to be called a method, but certain writers about Derrida say that it's really a method. So I'm gonna call it a method as well, because I think it is. Deconstruction wants to expose all of that trace, for any dualist philosophers, he wants to deconstruct that, to expose any trace, just to expose any kind of contradictory absence of presence things, to expose all of that, to deconstruct things and marginalize it, and to make it reversed, and to, show that there's no, show that there is no reason to hold any kind of ontology or any kind of metaphysics about really anything, and also that having your opinion indefinitely, or having a if I were to hold my dualism, and this is just an example, if I were to hold my dualism indefinitely, and I were to make an argument as to why there's no way that monism or physicalism could be true, that is logocentrism, because really it's a kind of it, but it's most philosophy is logocentric, but it's logocentrism because if you hold any position indefinitely, don't recognize the other one, because if you deconstruct dualism, you will find monism and physicalism. I have a good few videos on Derrida's work. It's in the playlist called Deconstruction and Post-Structuralism, and I haven't really done so much on post-structuralism, so I should delete that part of the title, but it's mostly a playlist for Derrida's work and others. So I'm trying to just make some videos which is going over the concepts, some of his concepts, and in this video I'm trying to just discuss his concept of trace. I'm gonna trace, basically what it is, when there's a sign, the trace is, every sign has a trace, in that this trace of any sign is what differs from that sign. So and it's just if I say that there's presence somewhere, that means that there's absence somewhere else. Presence is related to absence. Having presence or any kind of metaphysics, has a trace of absence and back and forth. And now, if this doesn't really make any sense, Derrida's work is hard to discuss. It's hard to read. It's hard to get into, and it's hard to explain for people who have even a decent understanding of it. Like, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I've read a good bit of his work, and I have a decent understanding. I say decent because I don't think anybody can really be a true expert of him. You can be an expert of Hegel, but you really can't be an expert of Derrida, because some of his writings, it can turn a corner in different ways and just be totally different from different things. It's just a different kind of writing, I guess. So, a trace. To give you an example of what he means by trace, in one of the essays, I can't remember which one, in the Speech of Phenomena by Derrida, he criticizes, well, in the whole Speech of Phenomena, all of those essays, he criticizes Edmund Husserl's philosophy. This is Husserl's Cartesian Meditations. In that book, he criticizes Husserl's philosophy in his phenomenology and in his theory of time and his phenomenology of internal time consciousness. He basically criticizes the whole thing. He states that Husserl is committing metaphysics of presence and also is committing logocentrism. And when he's criticizing, when Derrida is criticizing Husserl for his work in the phenomenology of internal time consciousness, he says that Husserl emphasizes a presence, because then Husserl has this whole, and I have videos about that as well, videos about Husserl's phenomenology of internal time consciousness. Husserl has this big, elaborate, and I think it's a beautiful theory of time. I love it. It's a theory of time and the phenomenology and consciousness of it. And Derrida criticizes, now talking about that book is a whole different thing, but Derrida criticizes Husserl in that book and says that he emphasizes time and forgets about past and future. I have written a paper for my advanced writing seminar in philosophy class, which was a pretty good paper, I think, and I presented it also at a conference, at an undergrad conference. But the whole thing is, Derrida is saying, for one, that if you emphasize presence, they're in this whole sign of presence, there's a trace that is hooked onto that. There's a trace that is hooked onto that, because past is not future and present is not future and present is not past. So, present, if Husserl was emphasizing present, there's a trace of future and a trace of past that are hooked onto that present, and that's why Derrida says that Husserl is emphasizing the present is wrong, because because future and past are a part of present, so you can't really emphasize one of those three. So you can't, well, according to deconstruction theory, you really can't hold, you can't be a Platonist entirely. You can't be a whole entire Platonist. You can't claim there to be presence without recognizing that there's absence. It's a difficult thing to explain. But basically, what trace is that in any concept, in any kind of concept or sign, and every concept or sign says something. Of course, it says something and has some kind of a thing that it's saying. Via language and such. It has something that it's saying, and the trace of any sign or concept is what that sign isn't. Future isn't present. past isn't present, so that the traces of present are past and future. That's why Derrida was arguing against Husserl on that one thing. Personally, I don't think that Husserl was really emphasizing presence like Derrida said he was, but that's a good example to see what trace is, and that's really what it is. Now I think to understand what trace is, you have to understand what difference is, and what the whole thing of deconstruction is. You have to understand what difference and deferral are to Derrida in his theory of deconstruction, and it's if you don't really understand that, then this is just a concept that that won't make any sense to you. And Derrida wanted to expose every single trace, to the logocentrism. Derrida stated that is a bad thing for any philosophy to have. Logocentrism is because it is centered. Logocentrism meaning that it's centered on one certain thing, and the aim of the method of deconstruction is to decenter and to expose that trace, to expose all of that, and to, for one, not commit metaphysics of presence either, and not have a Platonist ontology, or have, or believe in the absolute or monads or whatever, because, that, and I want to make more videos about these concepts, but I could probably talk for a while about this, and I think if you have a question about this, or Derrida's work, or something like that, I haven't been that far into The Gift of Death by Derrida, and I haven't been too far into the Politics of Friendship by him either. So those two works I'm not very fond of, but his main ones, like of grammatology and the speech of phenomena, and and dissemination is one that I've read, but the whole thing of pharmacon, I want to make a video about his pharmacon, that concept that's in this book. I've read through it, but I'm not quite ready to make a video about his concept of pharmacon quite yet. I'm trying to make sure that I'm good before I try to talk about it. So anyways, if you have a question or anything about trace, or about Derrida's basic deconstructionist concepts, please comment. I'd love to discuss it with you. Whenever you comment, I get an email on my iPad, and then I will usually, if it's a question, that I immediately know I know the answer to, I will go over to it and answer it. Thank you.